HOA Karen calls cop on Asian woman at her own pool, only to find out she's the police chief. Now picture this. The cloying scent of chlorine preceded Brenda, a chemical curtain drawn before the turquoise stage of the Oak Creek community pool. Silence reigned, a welcome change from the weekday norm, the shrill chorus of children muted to the delicate whisper of water kissing the pool's edge. A weekday afternoon, free of endless meetings, overflowing inboxes, and the incessant chatter of the dispatch radio, a half-remembered luxury. Today, this respite was a pilfered treasure before the inevitable storm clouds gathered. Beneath the lacy shade of a venerable oak, Brenda spread her well-worn beach towel across an empty lounge chair. More often than not, she was Chief Ishikawa, bearing the mantle of authority and navigating the ceaseless observation that came with it. Here, incognito, she could just be Brenda, stealing a few sun-drenched hours. She lowered her sunglasses, allowing her gaze to acclimate to the brilliant glare reflecting off the water. Her attention snagged on a young mother struggling to contain a toddler hell-bent on diving headfirst into the shallows. The universal tableau, a blend of exasperation and bottomless affection, played out before her, a simple moment brimming with quiet beauty. Oak Creek, a mosaic of lives, a vibrant tapestry woven from disparate threads. Its rich diversity was both its greatest asset and most significant hurdle, a community she had sworn to safeguard, not just the select few who felt exempt from the rules binding everyone else. Extracting a dogged paperback from her canvas tote, she found the words dissolving into abstract shapes. Her thoughts kept returning to the precinct, the mountainous paperwork accumulating on her desk, the faces of her officers seeking direction. Accepting the position of police chief had been a gamble. Oak Creek wasn't home, nor a place she had ever considered. Yet the lure of leadership, of molding the department according to her vision, of expunging the entrenched tendrils of corruption and apathy, had proven irresistible. Her predecessor had been complacent, to put it gently, content to let things remain as they were. And the status quo, in Brenda's estimation, was fundamentally broken: excessive deference to the affluent, insufficient attention to the concerns of the working class and marginalized populations. She recalled the arched brows, the veiled skepticism that had greeted her appointment. A woman, of Asian descent no less, stepping into the role that had always been reserved for others. She had heard the murmurs, sensed the underlying resistance. But she had also witnessed the spark of hope in the eyes of the younger officers, who still clung to the ideals of justice, fairness, and the promise of a brighter future. A sudden splash shattered her contemplation. Two teenagers, their boisterous laughter ringing out across the pool, were deeply engrossed in a game of Marco Polo. A genuine smile bloomed on Brenda's face, crinkling the corners of her eyes. These stolen moments of normalcy were a reminder of why she'd chosen this path. She envisioned an Oak Creek where children could frolic without fear, where families could gather free from prejudice, where every individual felt valued and secure. A lofty goal, especially given the current climate. The nation felt perched on a precipice, and that nervous energy infiltrated even the most seemingly tranquil communities. A woman materialized beside her, her expression etched with displeasure. "Excuse me," she began, her tone sharp as glass. "Do you live around here?" Brenda straightened, pushing her sunglasses back up the bridge of her nose. "Yes, I do." "Well," the woman huffed, casting a dismissive wave in the direction of the teenagers. "Those boys are being incredibly loud. Some of us are trying to enjoy some peace and quiet." Brenda tracked her gaze. The teenagers were certainly rowdy, but equally undeniably, they were enjoying themselves, reveling in the simple joys of summer. "I'm sure they don't mean any harm," Brenda replied, maintaining a calm demeanor. "They're just kids being kids." The woman's lips compressed into a thin line. "Well, some of us pay a lot of money to live in a peaceful neighborhood. We shouldn't have to tolerate this kind of disturbance." Brenda felt a familiar surge of irritation. Here it was, the entitlement, the presumption that privilege conferred the right to dictate the conduct of others. She drew a deep breath, reminding herself that she was off duty, that she was supposed to be unwinding. "Perhaps you could speak with them directly?" she suggested evenly. I'm certain they would be happy to lower their voices slightly. The woman scoffed. I wouldn't dream of it. That's what we have the HOA for. She spun around, retreating with a muttered comment about devaluing the neighborhood. Brenda watched her depart, a weary sigh escaping her. Even here, even on her day off, there was no escaping the trivial dramas and simmering resentments that plagued Oak Creek. She lifted her book once more, only to have the words blur before her. The tranquility she had sought had vanished, replaced by the all-too-familiar weight of obligation. She was the police chief, and she was committed to serving with impartiality. That entailed safeguarding the rights of everyone, including the teenagers splashing in the pool and the disgruntled woman complaining about the noise they made. It promised to be a long summer. The self-appointed guardian. The astringent tang of chlorine assaulted Carol Vandergelt's senses as she scanned the pool enclosure. Tuesday afternoons were typically tranquil, yet even sparsely populated, the area teemed with infractions. A child, barely kindergarten age, cavorted with boisterous abandon near the entry, splashing water onto the immaculate stonework. Unacceptable. Carol catalogued the offense: excessive splashing near the periphery, a potential trigger for a lawsuit. She'd add it to the burgeoning agenda for the next HOA gathering. Further along, a couple, seemingly absorbed in their reading material, occupied adjacent lounge chairs. They were both shielded behind tinted lenses, but Carol suspected the woman's swimwear offered far too little coverage. The woman's ink was prominently displayed, defacing, in Carol's estimation, an otherwise passable appearance. Tattoos. Honestly? This was a refined neighborhood, not some tawdry circus act. Carol adjusted the brim of her hat, its flowered design a conscious attempt to soften her otherwise severe mien. She plucked at her linen frock, a familiar disquiet bubbling within. Intervention was required. This descent into the commonplace simply could not be tolerated. Catching sight of Mark Olson near the refreshment stand, listlessly sipping a tepid lemonade, Carol advanced. Dear, predictable Mark. He was among the select few in the community who grasped the gravity of upholding standards. Mark, she declared, her tone sharper than she intended. Have you taken notice of what's transpiring here? It's utterly dreadful. Mark jolted, narrowly avoiding a lemonade spill. Carol! Didn't realize you were here. Dreadful? What is it? He blinked, his gaze flitting around the pool landscape, clearly searching for the epicenter of Carol's discontent. Everything, Mark. That woman's attire, the aquatic mayhem, the overall lack of propriety. It's simply not what it once was. Carol made a sweeping gesture toward the offending parties. Remember our early days here, Mark? The neighborhood felt so inviting and distinguished. Look at it now. Mark concurred readily, his brow creased. It's true, Carol. Things have shifted. He tentatively sampled his drink. Perhaps it's the new residents? Carol scoffed. The new residents, precisely. They possess no regard for the covenants. No vestige of civic pride. She dropped her voice to a confidential murmur. Did you observe their parking fiasco last week? Halfway into the sidewalk. It was an eyesore, Mark, a complete blight. Mark visibly recoiled. Improper parking was a grave offense in Carol's moral code, alongside overgrown lawns and ill-considered holiday embellishments. And the outdoor cooking? Carol pressed on, her timbre intensifying. The pungent aroma of charred meat permeating the air, late into the evening. It's inconsiderate, Mark, utterly inconsiderate. Mark grimaced. He'd indulged in a barbecue himself the previous weekend, a secret he dared not reveal to Carol. Perhaps we could gently remind folks about the regulations? A friendly word, perhaps? Carol regarded him witheringly. A friendly word is insufficient, Mark. These people must be held to account. They must understand the repercussions of their actions. We cannot permit them to dismantle everything we strive to create. She paused, her gaze drifting across the pool area once more, her face hardening. It falls to us, Mark. Somebody must serve as the custodian of this community. Someone must guarantee the maintenance of standards. Otherwise, what is the point of residing here? straightening her spine. The floral decorations on her hat danced. "We bear a duty, Mark, a solemn obligation." Mark, thoroughly subdued, offered a sheepish nod. "Of course, Carol. You're absolutely right. As always." He took another gulp of his lemonade, the acidity doing little to improve the bitter taste in his mouth. He knew what awaited. A torrent of fastidiously worded grievance emails, thinly veiled accusations at the next HOA meeting, and predictably, more work for him. He only hoped he wouldn't be summoned to measure someone's grass length again. Last time, Carol had insisted on employing a laser-guided measuring device. An unwelcome gaze. Carol's perfectly pedicured toes tapped a staccato rhythm against the sun-warmed concrete of the pool deck. Mark, beside her, was half asleep, his nose buried in a dog-eared thriller, but Carol's simmering agitation prevented any chance of tranquility. It wasn't the splash of children, nor the drone of the pool filter, but the woman by the far end of the pool, the one with the sleek black hair pulled into a high ponytail, who was disrupting her peace. "Mark!" she hissed, nudging him with her elbow. He grunted, reluctantly peeling his gaze from the page. "Look over there." "New face." Mark blinked, his eyes struggling to adjust to the sunlight. "So? It's summer, Carol. People visit. Visiting implies being invited." Carol sniffed, adjusting her designer sunglasses. "And that bathing suit. It's practically a string. Not exactly the standard we uphold here at Oakridge Estates." Brenda Ishikawa, oblivious to their scrutiny, stretched languidly on a pool chaise lounge, her skin gleaming with sunscreen. She wore a simple, yet elegant, black bikini. Carol, however, saw only an unwelcome intrusion, a blatant disregard for the unspoken rules of their community. She probably doesn't even live in Oakridge, Carol thought, her mind already filling in the blanks. Asterisk probably snuck in from that new apartment complex on the other side of the highway. They attract a certain element. Asterisk the thought sent a shiver of distaste down her spine. Oakridge was carefully curated, a haven of manicured lawns and like-minded residents. A bastion of tradition. And Brenda Ishikawa, with her almond-shaped eyes and her different look, threatened to upset the delicate balance. Mark sighed, shielding his eyes with his hand. "Honestly, Carol, she's just trying to relax. Leave her be." He knew how these things went with Carol. A perceived infraction, a silent judgment, and then, the inevitable confrontation. He just wanted to finish his book. "Relaxing is one thing, blatant disregard for the rules is another," Carol countered, her voice tight with indignation. "What if everyone started inviting outsiders? What if they all started showing up in ***? She made a vague gesture towards Brenda, careful not to be too obvious. "The pool would be overrun. Property values would plummet." The truth was, Carol didn't know for sure if Brenda was a resident or not. But something about her, the quiet confidence, the way she carried herself, the very fact that she didn't seem to care what anyone thought, irritated Carol to no end. Probably doesn't even understand the importance of maintaining community standards, Carol mused, her self-righteousness growing with each passing second. Someone needs to say something. Mark groaned, sinking further into his chair. He knew what was coming. He'd seen this play out too many times before. "Please, Carol. Just don't." But Carol was already rising to her feet, her beach bag clutched tightly in her hand. "Someone has to, Mark. We can't just let this slide." She marched towards Brenda, her sandals slapping against the concrete. The midday sun beat down on her back, but Carol barely noticed. She was on a mission, fueled by righteous indignation and a deep-seated need to maintain the status quo. As she approached, she imagined the conversation unfolding in her head. "Excuse me, are you a resident of Oakridge Estates? May I see your pool pass?" She rehearsed the lines, practicing the tone of polite yet firm authority. Brenda, sensing someone approaching, looked up from her book. Her expression was calm, almost serene. Carol faltered for a split second, unnerved by the woman's direct gaze. But she quickly recovered, reminding herself that she was doing what was best for the community. "Excuse me," Carol began, her voice a little higher than she intended. "I don't believe I've seen you around here before." "Show me your papers." The acrid bite of chlorine wrestled with the cloying sweetness of Carol Vandergelt's perfume. She advanced on Brenda Ishikawa, a study in calculated entitlement, the tap-tap-tapping of her wedged sandals against the pool deck a metronome keeping time with her self-importance. Brenda, languidly draped on a turquoise lounger, sunglasses shielding her eyes, remained a picture of serene indifference. "Excuse me." Carol's voice, a honed blade, sliced through the gentle lapping of water against the pool's edge. Brenda didn't stir. Carol cleared her throat, the rasp of it a deliberate act of aggression. "Excuse me, miss? Are you deaf?" Sunglasses lowered. Brenda's gaze, dark and direct, met Carol's. "Yes? I don't recognize you," Carol stated, suspicion coating each word. "And I pride myself on knowing everyone in the community. Papers, please." The demand hung heavy, dripping with undisguised contempt. Brenda's brow arched. "Papers? Your pool access card. Proof of residency. Something to demonstrate you belong here." Carol snapped, her crimson lacquered nails drumming a staccato rhythm against her outsized raffia bag. "We've had incidents with unauthorized individuals using the facilities." Brenda sat up, adjusting a strap on her swimsuit. "I live here. Unit 42B. 6 years now." Carol emitted a short, derisive snort. 42B? Preposterous. The Millers live there. A quaint retired couple. Caucasian. Unless they've undergone a dramatic reinvention, I rather think I would know. A hard edge entered Brenda's tone. "I purchased the condo from the Millers 6 years ago. In fact, I can describe their ghastly collection of ceramic frogs they bequeathed to the garden, if you wish." Carol's face blossomed with a furious rouge that clashed spectacularly with her garish sundress. "Don't be impertinent with me. I'm on the HOA board, and I'm obligated to verify that all residents are in compliance. And frankly, you don't strike me as the type I generally see at our meetings. Perhaps because I possess interests beyond the minutiae of community pool regulations," Brenda retorted, her composure unruffled despite Carol's palpable animosity. She reached for her beach bag, a woven cornucopia overflowing with sunblock, a well-thumbed novel, and the remains of a snack mix. "I don't have my pool pass on me, no. But I can retrieve it from my condo. Or, better yet, summon security to confirm my address. Would that suffice?" Carol folded her arms, lips compressed into a thin, disapproving line. "Security is worthless. They wave anyone through." Leaning in, her voice dropped to a theatrical whisper that nevertheless traveled across the pool area. "I suspect you don't even live here. You probably slipped in when the gate was ajar." Brenda sighed, the exhale lifting a strand of her short, dark hair. Sunlight caught the gleam of her silver hoop earring. "I'm not engaging in this charade. I am a resident. I pay my dues. I am entitled to be here." "Then prove it," Carol insisted, her voice climbing in pitch. A few heads swiveled, drawn by the escalating tension. "Show me identification. Something bearing your address." Brenda hesitated, reluctant to amplify the situation, yet increasingly exasperated by Carol's blatant harassment. "I don't carry identification to the pool," she stated, striving for neutrality. "Naturally," Carol sneered. "Because you don't possess any that confirms your residency, do you?" She gestured theatrically toward a nearby lifeguard. "Young man! This woman is trespassing. She claims to be a resident, but she cannot substantiate it." The lifeguard, a gangly teenager sporting acne and an air of profound boredom, glanced back and forth between the two women, visibly uncertain. A surge of frustration washed over Brenda. This was beyond absurd. She stood, gathering her towel and beach bag. "Fine," she said, a tremor of anger finally breaking through her carefully maintained calm. "I will retrieve my ID. And perhaps then you can discover a more constructive use for your time than accosting innocent people at the pool." She turned to go, but Carol wasn't finished. Don't flatter yourself by thinking you are getting away with this, Carol called out, her voice sharp and shrill. I'm watching you. And if you fail to return with verification, I'm contacting the authorities. Threats and false accusations. 5 minutes, Carol Vandergelt declared, her tone like shattered glass. Hands planted firmly on hips adorned with a particularly garish floral swimsuit, she added. 5 minutes to pack your belongings and vacate the premises. Otherwise, I'll be contacting the authorities for trespassing. Brenda Ishikawa inhaled deeply, fighting back the surge of fury threatening to erupt. Carol, I reside here. I presented my keycard. I swiped it for entry. Spare me the act, Carol retorted, waving a hand dismissively. That card could be pilfered from anywhere. I've noticed you lurking about, but you simply don't fit here. You look misplaced. Carol's gaze raked over Brenda, lingering with blatant prejudice on her dark hair and complexion. Brenda's grip tightened on her beach bag strap. I'm current on my HOA dues, just like everyone else. I own Unit 312. Consult the directory. Oh, I intend to, Carol snapped, retrieving her phone from her tote. And I'll also be reporting this to the board. Unauthorized amenity usage. Disturbing the peace. You think you can simply saunter in here and… Carol sputtered, struggling to articulate her indignation. It won't happen. Not while I'm here. Brenda rose, clutching her towel. The sun blazed overhead, yet a chilling premonition snaked through her. This was accelerating with alarming speed. She needed to defuse the situation before it spiraled completely out of control. Look, Carol, I appreciate your concern for security, truly, but I assure you, I'm a resident. How about we step inside to the office and verify my information? We can resolve this amicably. Carol's eyes narrowed into slits. Don't attempt to manipulate me. I trust what I see. And I see an interloper trying to exploit our community. Her voice gained volume, drawing attention. Heads turned beneath colorful umbrellas. A ripple of murmurs swept across the pool area. Carol, you're causing a spectacle, Brenda countered, striving for composure. This is unnecessary. A spectacle? You're the one creating a disturbance, intruding on private property. Carol puffed up like a venomous toad, her voice now reverberating across the entire deck. Everyone, look! This woman's trying to sneak into our pool. She doesn't belong. Brenda felt mortification prickle her skin. Eyes bored into her, filled with a blend of curiosity and judgment. A young mother quickly steered her children away from the pool's edge. A man adjusted his shades, his stare unwavering, accusatory. I am not trespassing, Brenda insisted, her voice tight. I am a resident. I have every right to be present. Then prove it, Carol challenged, venom lacing her words. Produce your deed. Your driver's license. Provide some tangible validation that you belong. Brenda's fists clenched. She yearned to scream, to unleash her fury, to tell Carol precisely what she thought of her appalling behavior. But she knew such a reaction would only worsen the situation. She had to maintain her equilibrium, to remain in command of herself. But the resentment simmered, rising like floodwater. You know what, Carol? Brenda stated, her voice low, a warning rumble. I owe you no explanation. I am a resident. And I refuse to be intimidated or harassed by you. Brenda collected her belongings, ignoring the residents' lingering gazes. As she retreated, Carol's piercing voice echoed behind her. I'm calling the police. I'm contacting the HOA. This isn't over. Brenda pressed on, not daring to look back. Her pulse hammered, a chaotic rhythm of anger and shame. As she headed toward the exit, she was certain of one thing. This confrontation was far from resolved. The cloying smell of chlorine seemed to permeate her very being, a constant reminder of the poisonous encounter. She needed refuge, a place to collect her wits and devise a plan for managing Carol Vandergelt. And she needed to do it before things deteriorated further. The memory of those scrutinizing glances seared her mind. This was not the greeting she had anticipated in this new phase of her life, and certainly not the tranquil afternoon she had envisioned. 9-1 what? Carol clutched the receiver, her grip of ice, the ringing echoing in her ear. A crisp, female voice cut through the silence. Non-emergency police line, Officer Davies speaking. I need to report a trespasser at the Willow Creek Estates pool. Carol snapped, the community's name like a bitter pill on her tongue. Understood. Could you describe the individual, please? The faint tap-tap-tap of a keyboard accompanied Davies' even tone. Carol inhaled sharply. She's not a resident. I know everyone. And she's just there. By the kiddie pool. Transfixed, almost. A physical description would be helpful. Davies replied, her voice betraying no hint of the annoyance Carol was so clearly trying to provoke. She's Asian. Dark hair, draped in some sort of gauzy cover-up. Oversized sunglasses. It's just wrong. We shell out a fortune for this HOA. We can't have just anyone traipsing around. Carol inched closer to the sliding glass door, her eyes narrowed. Brenda, she noted, had produced a book. Trying to look innocent, no doubt. A beat of silence from Officer Davies. Ma'am, are you sure she's trespassing? Have you inquired if she lives in the estates? No, I haven't. Carol huffed, indignant. I shouldn't have to. It's obvious. Besides, I don't feel safe approaching her. One can never be too careful, you know? Poolside Brenda, initially lost in her novel, felt the weight of an unwavering stare. At first, she chalked it up to mere curiosity. Now, she saw the woman on the patio brandishing a phone, gesticulating wildly in her direction. Fragments of the one-sided conversation drifted on the breeze. Doesn't belong, suspicious, needs to be checked. Brenda's temper began to rise. Deliberately, she marked her place, snapped the book shut, and rose. Her kimono, a whisper of linen, danced around her legs. She advanced towards the patio, a deliberate challenge to the woman's hostile gaze. Oblivious to Brenda's approach, Carol continued her tirade. She's probably casing the joint. Looking for homes to burglarize. Or worse. You people need to do something. I pay my dues. Davies sighed almost imperceptibly. Ma'am, we can't dispatch an officer solely based on appearance and a feeling. We require more than that. Has this woman issued any threats? Is she behaving aggressively? Is she on the premises after hours? Well, no, but... Carol floundered, groping for justification. She's different. And I have a bad feeling. Isn't that enough to warrant investigation? Brenda reached the patio's edge, her face a study in controlled anger. Is there a problem, ma'am? She inquired, her voice edged with steel. Carol recoiled, nearly fumbling the phone. Whoa. Oh, yes. Everything's peachy. I was just admiring your rap. A sickly sweet smile stretched across her face, but her eyes flickered nervously. On the other end of the line, Davies heard the exchange. Ma'am, is someone else there with you? Carol coughed. No. Nobody. I have to go. My souffle is about to collapse. She severed the connection, hanging up with a decisive click. Officer Davies stared at the phone, a frown deepening on her brow. She meticulously entered notes into the call log. Caller, Carol Vandergelt, reporting possible trespasser at community pool. Extremely agitated. Subject described only as Asian female wearing cover-up. No evidence of trespassing or suspicious activity. Possible bias on caller's part. Advised caller no crime committed. Call terminated abruptly. She designated the call low priority and sighed, already bracing herself for another call from Mrs. Vandergelt before sundown. Brenda stood firm, arms crossed, awaiting answers. I couldn't help overhearing, she stated, her voice dangerously calm. Exactly what about my enjoying the pool was so suspicious? Carol, flustered and cornered, stammered. I just didn't recognize you. I'm the HOA president, you know. I have to be observant. Observant? Or racially biased? Brenda challenged, closing the distance. Because it sounded an awful lot like you were reporting me for the high crime of Being Asian. Badge of authority. They'll be here any minute, Carol crowed, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. She gestured dismissively at Brenda with a perfectly manicured hand. Then we'll see who belongs here and who doesn't. Brenda's jaw tightened. The sun, relentless on the exposed patio, felt like a spotlight amplifying Carol's vitriol. The smell of chlorine, usually so refreshing, now stung her nostrils. She balled her hands into fists beneath the flimsy towel, trying to control the tremor that threatened to overtake her. Mark Olson shifted uncomfortably, avoiding Brenda's gaze. Now, Carol, maybe we're overreacting, he mumbled, his voice barely audible above the splash of children in the shallow end. Overreacting? Carol shrieked, her carefully applied makeup cracking with the force of her expression. She's clearly not a resident. And look at her, she's probably using the pool without even signing in. We have rules for a reason, Mark. Jasmine Rodriguez stepped forward, her own towel slung casually over her shoulder. Maybe she's a guest, Carol. Did you ever consider that? Jasmine's voice, calm but firm, was a stark contrast to Carol's shrillness. A guest? Of who? I know everyone in this community, and I certainly haven't seen her before. Carol sneered, emphasizing the word her with deliberate venom. Besides, even if she were a guest, they need to register them. I haven't seen any sign-in. Brenda had reached her limit. The simmering anger finally boiled over, fueled by Carol's condescending tone and Mark's cowardly silence. She unwrapped the towel, letting it fall to the ground. Her swimsuit, a simple navy one-piece, felt suddenly inadequate under Carol's scrutinizing gaze. She reached into the small waterproof bag she'd brought and, with a deliberate slowness that amplified the silence, unzipped it. Carol's eyes followed her every move, filled with triumphant anticipation. Instead of a wallet or phone, Brenda pulled out a small, leather case. The metallic glint of gold flashed in the sunlight as she flipped it open. The air seemed to thicken, the cheerful sounds of the pool fading into a muffled hum. Carol's smug expression faltered. Her mouth worked silently for a moment, then formed a confused "What?" Brenda held the badge aloft, the gold eagle gleaming. Brenda Ishikawa, she stated, her voice clear and resonant, cutting through the oppressive atmosphere. Chief of Police. And I assure you, Carol, I am a resident. I bought this house 6 months ago, and my HOA fees are paid up to date. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the children seemed to sense the shift in the atmosphere, their splashing momentarily ceasing. Mark Olson's jaw dropped. He gaped at Brenda, then at Carol, then back at Brenda again. Jasmine, however, simply nodded, a flicker of satisfaction in her eyes. Carol's face flushed crimson, the carefully applied blush standing out like war paint. Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. The triumphant gleam in her eyes had been replaced by a look of stunned disbelief. Her perfectly coiffed hair seemed to droop, the carefully constructed image of superiority crumbling before her very eyes. Brenda lowered the badge, but held Carol's gaze. The years of training, of facing down angry suspects and mediating tense situations, allowed her to maintain her composure, despite the internal turmoil. Perhaps, she said, her voice dangerously soft, before you make accusations, you should take a moment to consider who you are talking to. Carol's silence was her answer. She stood frozen, her body rigid with a mixture of shock and mortification. The power she so freely wielded had been turned against her, and she was utterly defenseless. Brenda took a deep breath, the chlorine smell no longer quite so offensive. The sun, still beating down, felt almost cleansing. She glanced at Jasmine, offering a small, grateful smile. Then, turning back to Carol, she added, Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going for a swim. She stepped past Carol, the woman's stunned silence a more satisfying victory than any shouted argument could have been. As she walked towards the pool, she could feel Carol's eyes burning into her back. But this time, they were not filled with contempt, but with something akin to fear. Consequences and choices. Carol, Brenda began, her voice a taut wire stretched near its breaking point. We need to address that police report. The one where you accused me of trespassing and disturbing the peace. Carol's chest swelled, sunlight catching the gold crucifix nestled against her throat. My statement stands. Your behavior was unsettling, and I'm entitled to feel secure within our community. Brenda closed the distance between them, the sharp odor of pool chemicals and discount sunblock assaulting her senses. You also alleged I harassed you and others. Name one person besides yourself who felt threatened, because I've confirmed no one else has lodged a complaint. Furthermore, dispatch confirmed the responding officer found no basis for your accusations. A tick pulsed beside Carol's mouth. He was probably swayed by your presence. Brenda refused to rise to the bait. A false police report is a crime, Carol. It's obstructing justice. And these persistent accusations are escalating into harassment. You're now harassing me. You've involved the authorities based solely on your own presumptions. Mark Olson, hovering like a nervous cloud, shuffled his feet. Now, Carol, let's not overreact. Carol's glare could curdle milk. Stay out of this, Mark. This is between me and her. The pronoun dripped with venom. The high-pitched drone of cicadas was joined by a distinct click, a phone camera engaging. Brenda's gaze flicked left to see Jasmine Rodriguez, face set in grim determination, her phone raised, recording everything. Perfect. She needed documentation. Turning back to Carol, Brenda held her gaze. I'm presenting you with a choice, Carol. One that could save you considerable grief. The anger was a live coal in her chest, threatening to ignite. She ruthlessly banked it down, striving for composure. This called for strategy, not histrionics. You can offer a public apology. A sincere one. An admission that you filed a false report, that your actions constitute harassment, and that you squandered valuable police resources. Acknowledge your error, the basis of your actions and prejudice, and pledge to cease this conduct at once. Brenda paused, letting her words find their mark. Or I will pursue this with every legal recourse available. That means pressing charges for the false report and potentially for harassment. Further, I will file a formal grievance with the HOA concerning your discriminatory conduct and violation of community standards. Trust me, Carol, the HOA frowns on unfavorable publicity, especially when it involves accusations of bias. Carol's complexion deepened to crimson, her mouth a rigid line. You believe you can bully me? March in here and dictate my actions? I'm not attempting intimidation. Brenda countered, her voice remaining level, despite the pressure that turned her knuckles bone white as she clutched her pool bag. I'm offering an opportunity to make amends. A chance to sidestep serious legal and social ramifications. The choice rests with you. The atmosphere thickened, heavy and still. The sounds of children playing in the pool seemed to dim, as if sensing the gravity of the confrontation. Mark Olson twisted his hands together, his gaze darting between Brenda and Carol, longing to disappear. Jasmine Rodriguez remained steadfast, her phone rock steady. Other residents were taking notice. Initially absorbed in books or casual chatter, a few glanced over, drawn by the palpable tension. Murmurs rippled through the gathering. Carol opened her mouth, poised to unleash another barrage, but Brenda preempted her. Choose wisely, Carol. Because once you've made your decision, there's no turning back. A new beginning. Honestly. Carol Vandergelp finally choked out, her complexion blotchy. Fine. I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry you were so sensitive. The concession landed like a shard of glass, all edges and no sincerity. Brenda fixed Carol with a stare, the saccharine tone doing little to conceal the animosity flickering in her eyes. Sensitive? Carol, this transcends hurt feelings. This is about targeted harassment. This is about you weaponizing the police against me for existing. Mark, a nervous energy emanating from him, offered a feeble gesture of appeasement. Carol, maybe. But out, Mark! Carol snapped, her gaze laser-focused on Brenda. This is none of your concern. Jasmine, still filming, subtly shifted, her face a study in outrage and resolve. The lens remained unwavering. Before Brenda could retort, a golf cart, proudly displaying the HOA emblem, skidded to a stop. Out spilled Mrs. Davison, HOA president, her face etched with concern, Mr. Henderson, the perpetually perspiring treasurer, and a young woman named Sarah, the new community liaison, clutching a clipboard like a life raft. Mrs. Vandergelt. Mrs. Davison began, her voice crisp and professional. We've received reports regarding an incident. Perhaps we could move this discussion to a more discreet location? Carol huffed. Discreet? I've done nothing wrong. This is all one giant misunderstanding. Regardless, Mrs. Davison pressed, a fleeting expression of sympathy crossing her features as she glanced at Brenda. We are obligated to investigate these allegations thoroughly. Brenda stepped forward, her voice ringing with conviction. There's nothing to investigate. I possess irrefutable video evidence. I have first-hand witnesses. Mrs. Vandergelt racially profiled me, summoned the police for simply using the community pool, and boasts a history of antagonizing other residents of color in this neighborhood. Mr. Henderson mopped his brow with a handkerchief, the gesture doing little to stem the flow. Sarah scribbled notes at a frantic pace. I believe, Brenda continued, her voice resonating with growing strength, that it's high time for some fundamental shifts within this community. And as both a resident and, incidentally, your chief of police, I intend to spearhead that change. The blood visibly drained from Carol's face, leaving her ashen. Mark swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing nervously. The HOA trio steered Carol away, their murmured voices fading into the background noise of the shimmering water. Brenda inhaled deeply, the knot of tension in her shoulders gradually loosening. Jasmine gave her arm a reassuring squeeze. Later, having provided a formal statement to the HOA board, Brenda addressed a small gathering in the community center, her tone both resolute and empathetic. This episode has exposed a festering wound within our community's heart, she stated. We must confront the biases, both acknowledged and unconscious, that fuel such discriminatory behavior. To that end, I will be mandating diversity and sensitivity training for all HOA board members, community staff, and personnel within the police department. A ripple of murmurs spread through the room. Some faces reflected astonishment, others a palpable sense of relief. Brenda pressed on, underscoring the need to cultivate a welcoming and inclusive atmosphere for all residents, irrespective of their background. This is not about retribution, she clarified, her voice gaining strength. It's about enlightenment. It's about forging a stronger, more empathetic community. A community where every individual feels valued, protected, and respected. As the meeting concluded, Mark hesitantly approached Brenda, his expression a mask of contrition. Brenda, he offered softly, I wanted to express my apologies. I should have found my voice sooner. I was a witness to what transpired, but I lacked the courage to intervene. Brenda met his gaze head-on, her expression unwavering. Mark, I appreciate the sentiment. But standing idly by is no longer an option. We each carry the responsibility to rise up against injustice, even when it requires bravery. He nodded, his eyes downcast with shame. I understand. I'll strive to be better. That evening, Jasmine texted Brenda. You need to check social media. Brenda navigated to the community's online forum. Jasmine had uploaded the video capturing the poolside confrontation. It was stark, unedited, and devastatingly revealing. The comments section had erupted in a frenzy. Some showered Brenda with support, applauding her bravery and demanding accountability for Carol's actions. Others adopted a defensive posture, dismissing the event as a mere misunderstanding and accusing Brenda of exaggerating. The digital battlefield was drawn. Yet, amidst the cacophony and the animosity, a new dialogue was beginning to emerge. Individuals were sharing their own encounters with prejudice and discrimination within the community's confines. They were challenging the accepted norms. They were clamoring for change. A fresh start, messy and uncomfortable as it may be, had begun to unfold.